What do you think the chances are that Doge comes back and says, Mr. President, sales tax it all and do away with the IRS?
Income taxes may be being eliminated. Have you heard anything about that?
What are the top 3 things that can trigger an audit?
Yeah, what's the deal with tariffs?
So will we see the lending interest rates come down?
Who are these economists that are saying that inflation will go up and will it go down?
Because if I've never heard of Smoot-Hawley, I can promise you Timmy hasn't ever. So let's not
guarantee you Timmy has, because it was in Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Bueller.
Look, everyone's excited about having a real estate developer in office, I think, from a real estate perspective.
So I think the overall environment is hopeful. But as we know, this particular president, things are a bit unpredictable.
One of the challenges for real estate folks with the new administration is
IRS audits are up quite a bit. Are those going to dial back?
what the economist says, just from an academic perspective, is right. I just don't think it'll be as bad as what they're saying in practice.
That's just a voluntary tax that you do not have to pay.
The government coming back to the office would have an outsized impact on the office sector nationally.
If they get the lady selling her knittings on Etsy that has an LLC and she has no idea about it, and they put her in jail, and then she's going to be on The View. And how's that going to play out, right? And but this was about to be a giant mess.
This episode is sponsored in part by the Massimo Group. Are you a commercial real estate broker looking to boost your business? The Massimo Group is the world's premier coaching organization, transforming the careers of brokers just like you, just like it did for me. Visit www.massimo-group.com today to get started and take your career to the next level. This episode is also brought to you by Site to Do Business, commercial real estate's most advanced toolkit, providing commercial real estate professionals like me with premier data, mapping, and marketing tools to win business and revolutionize decision-making. Visit stdb.com to learn more.
Welcome to Commercially Speaking. I'm Timmy Barron, ADHD.
And I'm Bo Barron, CCIM.
And this is the podcast where Bo teaches me everything about commercial real estate investing. I started an idiot. Now I'm here. I'm an actor and comedian, but now I'm a CRE aficionado. I have a question real quick for the audience, which is our last episode was almost 2 hours. And we typically try to keep them around 1 hour, but you had a comment or two of people saying they liked the length of it.
Yeah, I heard from a couple people that enjoyed the extra
time
span of it. So yeah, it would be good to hear from the audience and let us know, you know, did you like the longer format or?
Yeah, let us know in the comments right now. Did you like it around an hour? What are your favorite lengths of podcasts? We just want to hear from you. Bo, what are you teaching me today?
Well, we've got some guests on today that I'm pretty excited about. We've had both of these guys on before, so I'm really excited to have them back. But this episode is all about what we can expect when we look into 2025. So we have Lonnie Hendry from Trepp, the chief product officer there. So Lonnie's been with us before and we've got him back. So he's going to share with us what we can expect in the markets next year. And then we also have Kevin Bassett,
CPA,
who is my CPA and kind of the CPA to the commercial real estate industry. And he's going to share with us the tax side, what's changing. I know last week we had a big court decision that has impacted a bunch of us, and I have a big question about that because I haven't filled out all that stuff. That maybe now I don't have to, so I'm going to let Kevin tell me if I can just wait
I got a question too.
Or what. But yeah, fellas,
welcome, Lonnie.
Yeah.
How you doing, Lonnie?
Doing great. This is my third time on the show. I'm pumped.
First guest to be on here for the third time. Kevin, how are you doing?
Doing great. Glad to be back with you guys. Always fun.
Now, is this the third time for Kevin as well, though?
This is his third episode he'll be in.
That's right.
I did a tax mashup. So he's been in 2 different episodes, but just the one recording. So we're coming into 2025. There's a brand new administration coming in. I'm sure that a lot of people are either excited about it or they're just ripping their hair out over it. But in the commercial real estate field, in the field of taxes, CMBS loans, we brought you all on here because you typically do look, one of you, Lonnie, looks at all the data and can kind of project and see what might be coming down the line. And Kevin Bassett, you are a numbers money guy. You know all the tax stuff. So I was like, Bo, why don't we put them together? And here you are. So unless you had a question, I wanted to ask right away, Kevin, what is 2025 looking like? What are some of the most exciting things with the fact that there is changes coming with the new administration?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So one, there was an election, which, again, in America, everybody was all bent out of shape about last election of our lifetime, yada, yada. We seem to always do that. But, what it does mean with the red team going 3 for 3, we don't have to worry about tax rates going up in 2025, which was one of the proposals if the blue team had gotten all 3. And I think what a lot of us were expecting is it was going to be divided government. So anyway, 2025 is safe. The big question, which we'll talk about later, is what's going to happen in 2026, because the tax rates as we know it, although they're good for this year, good for next year, they are scheduled to expire in 2026. However, since the red team went 3 for 3, they've got a real chance of extending those rates in some form or fashion, and that's what we're all looking to watch.
Last time we spoke, there was something about the sunset. Can you remind me what that is, Bo? The sunsetting?
I think you're asking about bonus depreciation.
I am actually.
Okay.
That's one of the things. Yeah.
That's one of the things. So when you're talking about things expiring, that's one of the things expiring. Can you explain to me?
Sure. Yeah. So it's really 2 things. One is our current tax rates that have been in place since 2018 are scheduled to expire, the personal tax rates, at the end of 2025. So in 2026, the law says we're going back to the Obama era rates, and that's both higher tax rates. It's the phase out of itemized deductions, and the income levels at those higher rates kick in are substantially lower. So taxes will go up for everybody.
What's the difference? Like if they do nothing, what will the difference be?
So the top rate would go from 37 to 39.6, plus itemized deductions would be phased out again. That's called the PEACE adjustment, PEASE. And that would really take your actual rate to 42% at the federal level. In addition, for business owners and real estate investors, Section 199A, which lops 20% off of your tax rates for certain types of income, is also scheduled to expire at the end of 25. And that is a huge deal, a massive jump in rates. And then the third thing you mentioned, bonus depreciation, has now been phasing out for a few years. 60% now, 40% next year, 0% in 2026. And that would go away shortly, and then there's talks of whether they would try to bring that back.
Yeah, cool. What do you think, Bo?
The last time we got 100% bonus depreciation, it was Trump's tax bill 2017. I think it was 2017. So in 2018, it kicked in, and we had 100% bonus depreciation for a period of years, and then it started sunsetting. So we're in the 60% year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there's hope, especially guys like me are hoping that we get the 100% back, that Trump benefits hugely from that personally. So we're all kind of hoping that 100% comes back.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But I haven't really heard any direct talk about that. I think there's just hope we can get that.
Yeah. President-elect has not specifically brought that up, but this Congress had actually passed a bill in the House, and it ended up dying in the Senate. Usually it's the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
That was restoring 100% bonus depreciation retroactive to last year. And it ended up not going forward. The red team didn't want to give a win to the blue team. So they held it up, but they want to, there's talks that they want to bring that back as part of the tax bill in 2025. So we'll see.
Nice.
Yeah. And that would be, to your point, a huge benefit for commercial real estate, because that would bring that cost segregation strategy back in full. And, that tends to spur a lot of buying.
So with what we just heard, Lonnie, from Kevin about the outlook or what it might look like and things that we're hoping for, how's it looking on your side of things with commercial mortgage-backed security and all the data?
Yeah, so I think, look, everyone's excited about having a real estate developer in office, I think, from a real estate perspective. Like, he's favorable for deregulation. He wants more activity, and he wants to make it easier for people to borrow money, buy buildings, do other things. I mean, one of the other really interesting things is real estate's the only type exchange, 1031, that still exists. And if the Harris administration had taken office, they were putting a bunch of restrictions on that, trying to phase that out. So with Trump being elected, it's going to be a much smoother. I don't think that's on the chopping block at all. So I think from a real estate perspective, you have to look at the new administration coming in as super favorable to the real estate industry.
Well, I do have two questions. One is, we had a guest on a couple weeks ago, Isaac Grant, who used to be a commercial lender and he transitioned over into commercial brokerage. And we had a conversation about how the commercial lending interest rates are tied to the 10-year treasury. And even though we've gotten the federal fund rates, we had a 50% and then we had a 25% cut. And I think it's looking like the December meetings, most people think we're going to get another 25% cut again. But interest rates really haven't gone down, except I heard on the Tripwire podcast last week that it was, below 4.2%. Yeah. So we should start to see that. But we saw the federal fund rates go down, but we haven't really seen the commercial lending rates go down. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that and when we will we see the lending interest rates come down?
Yeah, it's an interesting construct in the sense that everyone kind of viewed the federal funds rate as being the benchmark rate. It's like, oh, the Fed's moved the rates down 50 basis points. They gave another 25. There's another 25 coming next week. But it doesn't really work that way for the lenders. Like basically they're tied to the 10-year treasury. So after the Fed lowered rates 50 basis points, the 10-year went up about 25 basis points. And then they lowered it another 25 basis points and the treasury stayed the same. Now it's ebbed and flowed. It's had some weeks or days where it's been lower and some that it's higher, but it's challenging for lenders right now because you have this psychological boost of like the Fed finally pivoting, but the math hasn't really changed for borrowers. The interest rates are still effectively where they were. There's some positive momentum in the sense that, the Fed, if they do another 25 basis point rate cut here in December, that maybe that gets things moving along in a favorable position. One of the challenges for real estate folks with the new administration is a lot of the tariffs and other fiscal policies that Trump campaigned on are viewed as having inflationary consequence for the broader market. So it's not unlikely. I mean, if you listen to the economists talking, they're saying that a lot of these things could actually increase inflation and force the Fed to raise rates again. So it'll be a very interesting dynamic. I think, look, if the Fed lowers or keeps rates the same in the next week, like I was of the opinion when there was a new election or a new president-elect, they should have just left rates where they were because it's kind of like a lame duck. Like the markets are going to price in what they think is going to happen, not reflective of what the Fed does right now. But they went ahead and lowered it last month. They're going to lower it again in December. I think first quarter of 2025, we'll have to see how quickly some of these fiscal policies get implemented or what that fast track looks like before we have any clear sense of what's going to happen with mortgage rates.
Well, you touched on my second question, which was about all the rhetoric about tariffs.
Yeah, and what's the deal with tariffs?
So first, could you explain it to me what a tariff is?
I think I know.
I think you probably do too, but I don't want to make any assumptions here.
Sure.
And then two, I wonder, to me, this is just my sense, and I'm no expert here. I don't have any inside baseball on this, and I definitely don't know the president-elect. But it sounds to me like he's using tariffs to bully the rest of the world. And it's a threat that I think is meant to be a threat and not necessarily something like, I wouldn't be surprised if he actually did some of that if they pushed him, but I think he's using that to, inflict potential future pain that will bring them our way. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And then, if you would, let's define what a tariff is.
Yeah. And before we jump right into that too, because my understanding and what I'm hearing is a tariff is basically an import tax. And Trump speaks of it like, if we're putting a tariff on China, China is paying. China is paying more, and we're trying to keep all the jobs here in America, or trying to keep more manufacturing here in America. And that's the reason for it. However, a lot of economists are saying that the cost is ultimately going to come down to the consumer, because these owners of these businesses cannot get that cheap price they're getting from China. So their prices go up, which means the consumer price will go up, and us as the consumers are going to pay for it. So what do you all think? And who are these economists that are saying that inflation will go up, and will it go down?
So I think one, that's a nice definition, Timmy. And I think you've wrapped that up with a bow really nice. So good. Mm-hmm. I think there's a couple of challenges with either position that these economists take or people that don't believe what the economists say. Like what the economist says, just from an academic perspective, is right. Like if China has to pay an exorbitant tax now effectively to bring their goods here, the fees eventually pass down to the consumer. That's problematic at some level. To Bo's point, though, like supposing we can ramp up manufacturing and we can get those jobs back here in the U.S., that creates economic vibrancy for the U.S. and actually makes it better for us in the longer term. So I think what Trump is doing is effectively what Bo said, where, my supposition would be that he's trying to use this as a way to get what he wants as a threat. Mm-hmm. I'm sure he will implement this. He did at some level in his first term where he brought tariffs into the equation. I don't think he'll be as bullish with them as he was on the campaign trail in terms of practice. He'll have economic advisors and other people saying, we cannot do this for these reasons. But I think it's like anything else. We live in a world right now where people let the rhetoric kind of go before the action. And I don't, if we apply some tariffs, like it's not going to crash our economy in my perspective. Just like other policy decisions that were made for the last 4 years or 8 years or whatever didn't crash things. Like maybe for some certain socioeconomic class or certain type of production good or whatever, it maybe is catastrophic for them in an isolated incident. But like overall, I think he's using it to try to get a better deal for the U.S. It'll just be interesting to see how that actually plays out. And I think it does create some uncertainty for folks. And what we know in real estate is that real estate operates most productively when there is certainty. So having uncertainty in the market or having all this rhetoric, I think does have some downstream potential implications. But to your question on who the economists are, I mean, these are folks that probably have just been in academia their entire life. And like from a pure textbook perspective, what they're saying is true. I just don't think it'll be as bad as what they're saying in practice. And I don't think the tariffs themselves will be implemented at the scale that people expect them to be in practice.
Sure. Now, Kevin, as a CPA, my assumption is that is adjacent to economist. I might be completely wrong there, but as a numbers guy, what's your feeling about this?
Yeah, it'd be interesting. It seems to be the consensus that some will be threatened. I was just on previous to this podcast on with one of our cross-border clients, and we're on with their cross-border attorneys, and they were speculating, and their thoughts were they probably will be put into effect on China and hopefully would either not be put in effect or be lower in North America. You certainly hope it's not extensive everywhere. We do have history with this, with the Smoot-Hawley Act of 1930, and we saw how that worked out quite horribly, right?
Wait, let me stop you there. Because if I've never heard of Smoot-Hawley, I can promise you Timmy hasn't ever. So let's not.
I guarantee you Timmy has, because it was in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, right? Ben Stein.
Bueller.
Was that what he was talking about?
He was. Yep.
All right. So what did Ben Stein teach us about Smoot-Hawley back then?
Right.
Yeah. Basically, right. It didn't work. It extended the Great Depression. So we'll see. But that was a pretty wide ranging global, tariff thing. So we'll see. Hopefully they'll be somewhat dialed back, because they are, studies show they are inflationary, and that's part of what you were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Well, with that, Kevin, are they inflationary, like as the tariffs are active, the inflation goes up and then stays up? Or because it seems to me like, there's going to be an adjustment where inflation will go up, but then it'll go back. It will deflate. Then we go to deflation. Is that ever used?
If the economy slows down, sure. Yeah. So anyway, I'm not an economist, but anyway, their history on tariffs is not favorable, and we'll see. Hopefully it's threatening to sort of equalize trade, right? That's his argument.
Yeah.
To smooth out trade, and we'll see. But that to your earlier point on interest rates, that's what some view of the uncertainty on interest rates at the moment.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yep. Uncertainty is not good for commercial real estate. What was the other question that you had?
Well, that was it. The first one was just, why haven't interest rates gone down yet if we're seeing the Federal Reserve cut rates? And the second was just to ask about tariffs.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when are we expected to, I mean, I know nobody knows, right? But when can commercial real estate professionals really expect for things to change and move a different direction? Because it just seems like we've been waiting, or y'all been waiting for interest rates to go down, and they went up, they went down a little bit, but nothing was quite changing. And there's a lot of hope, and it seems like the future is bright. When are we going to start to see some answers? I guess.
Well, can I reframe your question?
Please do.
Okay. I would love to hear maybe the 5-minute version from each of you on what we can expect going into 2025, because there's really not anything specific that changes other than the date on January 1st. But we have just had this election. We are going to have a new administration coming in. That will certainly change things. The outlook of the future is different because, and it would have been regardless of who won the election. But I'd love to hear from both of your perspectives. Like, just going into 2025, what do you anticipate things are going to look like? Specifically, what things might change? And is that, I think that'll answer your question.
That's fantastic.
Okay.
Yes, that's what I was asking.
All right, Kevin, let's start with you, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah. No, great question. So one, today's December 12th when we're recording this. So today's Wall Street Journal talks about an index that came out yesterday, small business confidence, and it's way up since the election. And part of it, what Lonnie mentioned earlier, some of the proposals of candidate Harris were very unfavorable from a tax standpoint to small businesses, specifically letting these rates expire, but also things like means testing 1031 exchanges, right? Greatly restricting those. Adding self-employment tax to S corporation K1 income. So, 199A would expire, the tax rate would go up, and it should add self-employment tax and Obamacare tax. And she was also proposing to increase the Obamacare rate from 3.8% to 5%. So a lot of things that were very unfavorable to small businesses. So those are now off the table. So that's kind of the first thing. So at least we know we've got the same rates in place this year than we do right now. The second thing, which won't come till later the year, will this tax bill come through extending these rates in some form to get us beyond 2025. One thing the markets dislike is uncertainty, and we do have uncertainty about tax rates in 2026, but now there's a real chance that those could get extended. That said, we got, the red team's got the presidency. They've got a nice margin in the Senate. This should get that through no problem. The House, however, is a very tight margin. And additionally in the House, and somehow in the president-elect's wisdom, he selected 3 potential cabinet members from the House of Representatives, which actually decreases his margin.
Oh, yeah.
And those will have to actually be vacant for a while and then up for special election, right? So that delays the vote, and no guarantee that they actually remain red, although they probably would. So that should have listened to somebody on that one. And then the other thing is the margin is very tight, and they're on the red team. There are a number of those that are populist candidates rather than traditional conservative Republicans, and they tend to be less pro-business. So it will be tighter in the House. So it's not a sure thing, but it's a definite possibility to get an extension of tax rates. And that, if that uncertainty can be eliminated, that's very favorable for businesses and investors.
Mm-hmm. Lonnie, what can we expect in 2025?
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting dilemma in the sense that if you look at where things are right now and you compare interest rates today to the last 50 years, we're kind of at the historical norm. Mm-hmm. The part that's an outlier was the zero interest rate policy period, where the government was effectively artificially stimulating the economy, took rates to zero. That's the outlier. It's not where we are today. So people have fallen in love with the zero interest rate, free money, 100% bonus depreciation, opportunity zone development credits, like all this stuff that was like super turbocharging the market. And now that rates have kind of leveled off at this point, they don't want to realize or accept that like this is kind of where we're going to be. So I think in 2025, there has to be some realization for folks that discussion of lower interest rates maybe is valid, but it's not going to be low interest rates like 2019, 2020, 2021 interest rates like that. I think that's the outlier. So I think if we get another 25 basis points in December, they maybe lower, you can look at the dot plot. So the FOMC puts out a dot plot that kind of looks out for the next couple of years and tells you what they think rates will do. It's the closest thing to like a forecast that we get on as it pertains to the federal funds rate. And it generally suggests that rates are going to come down. But as Bo mentioned, like that doesn't necessarily by definition mean mortgage rates come down. I think 2025 is probably going to look a lot like 2024. If we flash back to like this time last year, Powell basically told everyone inflation's over, it's all good. And so the market priced in like 6 rate cuts in 2024, and they were thinking it was going to happen almost immediately. And then here we are, we didn't get our first rate cut, I think, till like September. The markets are dynamic. They're going to be looking at the data. There's a little bit of friction between Trump and Powell. Like Trump's made that known. So I think 2025, if I'm guessing, at least the first quarter, first half of the year, I don't see anything substantial either direction. I think you probably see kind of a leveling off. And I think for market participants, look, if they know that's what rates are going to be, you can price deals based on those rates. It's not like we can't operate where we're at. But for these legacy struggling properties that have a 3.5% interest rate that are going to have to refinance into a 6, the math doesn't work in their favor, and they're going to have to come to the closing table with some cash to get some deals done.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because if I did a big multifamily deal in 2021 and I used a 3.5%, 36-month interest only bridge type financing so that, interest only, so I can rehab the project, put a bunch of lipstick on it, raise the rents, and then all these increases went up. If the market stays the same and doesn't come down, like I am sitting here in some ways expecting a little bit of a bloodbath. Like there's going to be a lot of issues with a lot of these deals where they didn't anticipate doubling their cost of funds on the refi, and it's going to wipe out all the equity. And if they want to keep the project, they're going to have to, cash in, refi that thing, or they're going to have to get rid of it, or they're going to lose it, and the bank's going to end up with it. So
unless they extend it, right?
Yeah.
Which
so
is possible, but
like if the market levels out and we expect that interest rates are going to stay here, like, am I thinking about that correctly, Lonnie? That you're going to see a lot of these projects that are really just going to get hammered.
Even more so this year too, right? Than last year.
I mean, look, I think the 2025, it's an interesting dynamic. Like multifamily has definitely got some storm clouds. You have to have some caveat though for multifamily. About 50% of all multifamily deals are financed using Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. So they have this government backstop that basically provides financing at preferable rates, good terms that like the other property sectors don't enjoy, right? So
like
multifamily
like
if you use HUD financing, you get like 40-year, 50-year amortization terms, super low interest rates. You got to fill out 9,000 papers of application and all this stuff. But multifamily has some super advantageous financing relative to just other general commercial properties. But to your point, Bo, like in 2019, 2020, and 2021, there's bridge short-term floating rate financing took hold in multifamily. So just to give some context, been about $170 billion over the last 5 years of short-term floating rate, what we call CRE, CLO financing done in the U.S.
120 billion?
170 billion.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
70% of that is multifamily, and 70% of the 70% is Sunbelt state. So if you're a Sunbelt multifamily owner-operator that bought a 1970s property with the intention of rehabbing it, increasing the rents, upclassing it to a Class B, and you have floating rate debt, you have some challenges. The first challenge was the lender required an interest rate cap just for the initial term. So if your initial term...
You're going to have to explain interest rate cap.
So effectively, when you have a floating rate deal, the lender wants some protection that if rates go from 0 to 9, that you don't automatically go from 0 to 9. So you can buy what's called a cap, which effectively caps the percentage of increase or the maximum rate that you can experience, right, during the cap period. Well, when rates are effectively 0, interest rate caps were not crazy expensive. The market had been stable. It wasn't volatile. You could get an interest rate cap at a reasonable price. And so lenders required it. It's just standard business practice, right? Well, when the Fed raises rates 500 basis points in 15 months, what do you think happens to the cost of rate caps? They jump through the roof. I mean, like to the tune of like what used to cost, call it $30,000, might be $500,000 or $1 million to buy now.
Woo!
Now it's subsided now because we've kind of leveled off, but like during the peak, it was really challenging. So You have a property that by definition is not cash flowing because it's a rehab. You had to buy an interest rate cap, but the cap only protected you for the first term of the loan. So if it was 24 or 36 months, as soon as that expired and you had a 12-month extension option already built in, the lender says, we'll give you an extension, but you have to buy a new rate cap. Well, instead of paying $30,000 for a rate cap, you're paying $300,000. Whatever cash flow you had is now gone. And guess what? That bought you 12 months. And on the macro for multifamily, in the last 2023 through now, we've added 1.3 million new multifamily units across the U.S. So you have crazy expensive financing on floating rate deals. All of that rent growth that you underwrote on your acquisition pro forma, where you're underwriting 8, 10, 12% rent growth. When you factor in 1.3 million new units in the U.S., you're not getting that. In fact, like over the last 2 years, 2023 saw 1% rent growth nationally. 2024 is actually down 1% so far. So like that's problematic. And then guess what? You can't sell because it's not worth what you paid. So like there's some real challenges there. But with Fannie and Freddie having such a huge part of the pie, this is inconsequential to the overall multifamily space. So is there distress in multifamily? Yes. On a percentage basis, we're talking 1, 2, 3% of the overall multifamily universe. So like in certain pockets in the Sunbelt, you're going to see some inexperienced operators that got in over their head, used financing that didn't work out for them, and they're in trouble, and they're going to lose the asset. For most people, though, in multifamily, it's just you didn't experience the rent growth you thought you would broadly, but it's not impacting your financial performance or stability.
Gotcha. So what I'm hearing you say is that there is potential major opportunity in 1 to 3% in the Sunbelt states in multifamily coming in 2025.
If you have the capital. I mean, I think that's the part is these properties are probably mid rehab. You had inexperienced operators that got in at the tail end of the cycle when money was free. They didn't have a lot of experience and they took a bunch of retail investor money and they weren't able to execute. So you might be buying a property that was rehabbed halfway that you have to go back and start over at zero because they just didn't know what they were doing. And so these are capital intensive assets. You're going to have the cash. Bo mentioned cash in refinance. Kind of a funny story. A couple months ago on our podcast, I had made a joke that I was going to buy the website, cashinrefi.com or whatever the URL. And then someone actually, one of our listeners bought it, called me up and said, hey man, I bought cashinrefi.com. You want to buy it? I said, no, I'm not paying you for that. so if you're interested in that URL, like I know the guy that does it. He can, I can connect you. You can maybe buy it from him.
Oh my God. Yeah, your joke's got some consequences.
Yeah,
man. People are spending dollars based on what you say.
That's right.
I don't know that was a good use of their funds. I'll tell you.
Maybe not. Yeah. Maybe not. They thought they were going to get a quick return on that phone call. So okay, that's a picture of multifamily. But quickly, what about office? What about retail? What about industrial?
Yeah, industrial still preferred asset class across the U.S., although it's starting to slow down some. These really large spec developments losing a little bit of their luster. People want things that are now 250,000 square foot or less. They want them to be divisible. They're easier to lease that way, and there's more demand for that size of space right now. These really large 1 million square foot distribution centers, Amazon's pulling back. It's not as desirable, but industrial super strong still. Retail, if you tap back out regional, super regional malls, retail's on fire. It's better than it's been the last 25 years. And I don't see that slowing down. For every store closure announcement you hear about stores expanding, opening up new storefronts. So like retail's in a really good position. Office is challenging, and office is going to be challenging. Like we're talking about office as if it's going to be fixed in the next couple of years. Like for functionally obsolete Class B office across the U.S., like this could be a multi-year type of challenge. Like the example I give, I don't know, maybe 18 months ago, it's been a while since I've looked at the data, but Minneapolis had about 3.5 million square feet of sublease space available. So if I say the average tenant takes 25,000 square feet or 50,000 square feet, just divide that into 3.5 million, you're talking about multiple years before they get recovery. And they're going to be at much reduced rental rates because the sublease space is at half of what the regular market rent or the contract rents are. So I think office is challenged. I have some ideas on, there's winners and losers. If you're in Dallas, if you're in Miami, if you're in these other markets, we've had a ton of net in migration. We're building office towers in uptown Dallas right now. I mean, like construction cranes everywhere. So it's not a blanket statement, but for most people across the U.S. that have old office buildings that are in trouble.
Yeah, it seems like office might, according to the news and the headlines, that office might be coming back in the sense that DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, they were talking about a lot of government officials that I forget the percentage, but the small percentage that actually show up to work in an office every day. And one of the things they're talking about is getting rid of remote work and bringing people into office. And I'm hearing a lot of that there's a lot of talk around about companies wanting to bring people back in the office. Have you heard anything like that, Lonnie?
Yeah. So I was fortunate about 2 or 3 months ago. I got to go meet with Senator Gary Peters from Michigan up in DC. So I flew up there for a day, got to spend some time with him in his office. And this was one of the topics that I talked to him about. And I said, I think the government coming back to the office would have an outsized impact on the office sector nationally. Like if government workers, so just to give some perspective, we track the top 5 tenants in our securitized database. The government sector is some multiple larger than the next largest tenant. There's about, off the top of my head, I want to say there's like 1,200 properties that we have government tenants in. The next largest tenant exposure is less than 300 properties.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So if the government workers came back, it's a huge boon for office owners. It's huge for just other people that are maybe on the fence that can now push their employees to come back. He agreed. He said that they're working on it. They've got a bunch of studies. Some of this came out, I think Elon Musk talked about last week, like less than 5% of offices have people coming in every day that the government leaves.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge is just, and this is what he said, the GSA was super laissez-faire on in-office requirements pre-COVID. Most GSA workers only had to be in the office 3 days or maybe 4 days a week. It's going to be really tough to be more stringent on return to office post-COVID when you already were allowing people to only be in the office 3 days a week pre-COVID.
Sure.
So I think it's going to be challenging. And the flip side of like the government efficiency mantra is that if they can't get them back in the office, they're going to want to terminate the leases because the government spends an inordinate amount of money on office leases.
Mm-hmm.
So I've run we have some blog stuff coming out in the next couple of weeks, but if you actually start to break down the amount of space where the government has the right to terminate their lease with these office owners, it's significant to the tune of like hundreds of millions of dollars of annual rent that would just be wiped off. And that becomes now more vacant space that just significantly worsens the office plight.
Right. That's a good point.
That's what I was thinking about. Like when I think about Elon Musk and Vivek, I can't say his last name like you can, but when I think about government efficiency, if you don't need all those people, you don't need all that space. As a commercial real estate broker, your success depends on the right strategies and guidance. The Massimo Group, the world's top coaching organization for brokers, can help you scale your business and increase your income. And as a former client, I've personally experienced how their coaching can transform not only your career, but also your life. Don't wait to grow. Head to www.massimo-group.com today and see how their proven systems can work for you. This episode is also brought to you by Site to Do Business, the ultimate commercial real estate data analysis and mapping tool. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting out, Site to Do Business provides the data and insights you need to make informed decisions and close deals faster. Frankly, it's the tool that I use the most in my business. Access comprehensive market analysis, demographic data, and powerful mapping tools like ArcGIS, Placer AI, and Flood Maps all in one place. Identify the best locations for your clients, analyze market trends, and present your findings with confidence. Don't miss out on this game-changing platform. Visit stdb.com today and see how it can optimize your business. And now back to the show. And so if they actually are able to justifiably reduce the amount of government employees, you don't need as much space, which means in places like DC and other places that have a huge GSA footprint, there's going to be less demand for that space, which is going to continue to dump more space on the market.
Right.
And those markets will be, for office space, softer for longer.
Right.
And yeah, I'm
actually impacts it impacts multifamily and retail really badly as well. So like we've already seen rent pullback in multifamily space in DC because when workers don't have to go to the office, they're not going to pay the premium to live in DC. They're going to move to the suburbs and work from home. They're going to move somewhere else. So the office has like this network effect that negatively or positively impacts their local economies almost disproportionately. So if you're in one of these, if you're Chicago, San Francisco, LA, DC, that's like struggling with office, it has negative consequence, knock-on effects for retail and multifamily in particular.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Very interesting.
All right. I feel like we're neglecting.
Well, I got a question for Kevin.
Okay.
Yeah. Sure. So, Kevin, so moving into, and this kind of switching gears for a second, but moving into 2025, what is it that you are, for your clients, what are you having them take advantage of this year specifically?
Yeah, well, the first thing, right, so this time of year, we're in year-end planning season. And the good news is, right after the election, and it was actually settled quicker than we thought. We were able to have certainty on our year-end planning. We didn't have to do anything fancy to, accelerate income into 2024. Had the blue team gone 3 for 3, right? We had some real threats then, so we're able to know that we have 2 good year tax rates. But the other interesting thing, right, is it's really going to be watching what happens in 2025. I think there's a lot of hope that some favorable things happen. So first of all, we're grateful that some of the bad things are unable to happen as far as the tax impact on business owners and investors. But we're hopeful on tax rates, right? As I mentioned earlier, we're hopeful on Section 199A being extended, which I really just cannot overstate how important that is when it knocks 20% off the income of a business owner or a real estate investor. And that's from REITs up to your K1 from any syndicated project you're on. It's huge, all the way up to the income on your commercial real estate brokerage business. And then bonus depreciation is still out there, right? Can chance that could happen. But the other thing is on the administrative side with funding of the IRS, right? What's going to happen with enforcement? Well, IRS audits are up quite a bit. Are those going to dial back? On the flip side, we hope they don't kill funding for the IRS customer service, which is abysmal. It's gotten slightly better under the current administration, but it has such a long way to go. You just can't get somebody on the phone. And the other thing, I think one of the President-elect Trump's biggest accomplishments in his first term was deregulation, and that was very helpful to business owners. And he did it through a few things. He, issued the fewest new regs under any administration in quite some time, and also was able to eliminate some, quite a few through the Congressional Review Act, working with Congress. Although some of that did get thwarted in the courts, but we assumed that would pick up back again in the second administration. And then with DOGE, right, we got an unpredictable on exactly how that'll play out, right? Could be more efficiencies that come through. So I think the overall environment is hopeful. And but as we know, this particular president, things are a bit unpredictable. It'll be maybe a little more exciting than some administrations, but we'll see how it plays out.
What do you think the chances are that DOGE comes back and says, Mr. President, sales tax it all and do away with the IRS? Like, is that even a possibility?
Well, anything's possible, but the thing to remember, though, is the president cannot pass tax law, only Congress, as we remember back from Schoolhouse Rock, right? So
yeah.
He can't pass any tax things.
Yeah, well, what about, because I saw an interview about income taxes maybe being eliminated. Have you heard anything about that?
I hear things at election time. I've heard absolutely nothing out of the Ways and Means or Senate Finance Committee at all.
What's your understanding of how that would happen if it did?
There's not a proposal out there, so I have no idea. But you're talking about completely redoing our entire revenue system.
You mentioned audits just a second ago and how they're up. If I'm a business owner, well, I am, but like, what are the top 3 things that can trigger an audit? Like, if you were just going to say, don't do these 3 things and you're barely insulated from getting audited, what would those be?
Yeah, one would be get your tax return prepared right. It's so many audits are triggered because the preparer presented something wrong. They used the wrong business activity code, for example, and put numbers in the wrong boxes for lack of a better term, where the numbers and the margins for that particular business weren't consistent with the business activity code on the return. That's one. Another is, don't use any tax strategy in the IRS 30 dozen, and they rotate into different things. Don't do a conservation easement. Don't do a corporate airplane. Those are two examples that are on the current dirty dozen, where they're shifting enforcement into those areas. But if you do those, I would avoid those in general. So that would be another. And then your overall compliance record does affect your diff score and your audit rate. So that said, the majority of our clients have incomes in excess of $1 million, right? The audit rate's going to be higher. So we're very conscious of how we're presenting a return, filing a return to minimize that diff score.
What's a diff score?
Yeah, diff score, and it's a differentiated something factor. I'm sure I have the words wrong, but it's a algorithm the IRS uses to select a tax return for audit.
Discriminate function system.
There you go. All right.
Mm-hmm. Raise the potential for change. And also to everybody that's about to do taxes, or if you are in that bracket where your chances of getting audited is pretty high, just make sure that you track your mileage, right, Kevin?
Oh yeah. Let's in an audit, the few things are certain, right? Death and taxes, and an agent will request a mileage log. Yep, guaranteed. And that's whether you're taking actual expenses or standard mileage rate. But if it's a shareholder vehicle, you have to produce the mileage log.
Great. Well, do you have anything else?
I have. Well, here are some. I think Kevin just sort of answered these, but here's some versions of these questions. Like, what can CRE professionals do now to capitalize on the certainty that we now have going into 2025? Or what mistakes can they avoid? You kind of just answered that with, like, here's how not to get audited. But is there anything else kind of on either side of that coin? What can a CRE professional do to take advantage of the fact that, all right, now we have some certainty going into 2025, at least on the tax side? What can they do? Or definitely don't do this. And
sure.
Then I do want you to talk about the FinCEN stuff.
Oh yeah. I was love that we get to talk about that today. All right. So first on taxing, you're here at your end. If you're a CRE professional, if you've had a good year, then you really need to look at make sure that your tax is an S corporation. And at what income level should you do this? Is when your profits are really in excess of 80 or 100,000, and that's your commissions minus your deductions. So we work with a lot of CRE professionals, and sometimes folks will get referred in or upgrade from their current CPA, and they're operating as a sole proprietorship or a single member LLC or an LLC tax as a partnership. And the issue there is you're paying self-employment tax and Obamacare tax on that entire K-1 income. Mm-hmm. That's just a voluntary tax that you do not have to pay. And so electing S Corp status makes that go away. And now that the election is settled, we know that strategy is still safe, as candidate Harris actually was proposing to make that strategy ineffective. So you don't have to worry about that now. So making an S election, you can still do it for 2024. So work with your CPA. You can file that election up to March 15th of next year. You just have to have a payroll run to the shareholder by year end. And you can save a lot of money. But that's one of our tried and trues and an easy one. And the other thing, just make sure you capture all your deductions. And as Timmy said, keep that mileage log.
Very important.
Yeah.
Yes.
We have a sheet we do with our clients we call pre-tax in your lifestyle, but there's certain expenses that you're already paying, with the benefit of living in a first world country. But now that you're a business owner, they're deductible. And that's things like vehicle and home office and cell phone and home internet and a whole list of things that you're deductible, and you want to make sure you capture that.
Woohoo!
Now, Lonnie, I'm going to ask Kevin to actually talk about this, but I'm wondering, like, on your side of the house, when you're dealing with all this CMBS data and the market stuff, like, has the FinCEN stuff even spiked on your all's radar? Like, do you know what I'm talking about there?
Yeah. Look, no real estate investor wants to have to report to anyone what they actually own or what they're a part of, right? So, like, it's not something that's like top of mind for us at this point, because I don't think it's like no one's gonna have to do it. At least my interpretation is right now, it's not something that people have to do like they thought they were going to have to. But there's definitely been an uproar because most of, like, in the CMBS world, all of the properties are set up as an SPE, a single purpose entity. bankruptcy remote, all this stuff. They want everything in an LLC. They want to have, registered agents and all this stuff to handle that. They don't want to have anyone's name attached to anything. So, and partially because the tax treatment for real estate professionals or investors is so much better than like W-2 income earners, that they are a target for people if people know who they are, and they can make, a bunch of newspaper headlines and stuff with them. So it's definitely top of mind from my perspective of our users, investors, folks that live in the space. They definitely are not in favor of having to do this.
Okay. Yeah. I was wondering how far outside of like actual investors and syndicators and sponsors and stuff like that was that an issue? How far out did that ripple? But,
right. And before we get Kevin talking about it, one of my things on my to-do list right after recording this is to do my FinCEN.
Oh,
Yeah, for Tisby. Right. So that came up in our little Zen business thing. It's like, make sure you do this, do this. And so I was going to ask the question, but I didn't realize it was called FinCEN. Then I just looked it up. The Corporate Transparency Act requires reporting companies to file a report with the Department of Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN. Right. And so we have to do that. Does this mean, is what I'm hearing is like, that's likely going to go away, or like go ahead and fill that out and hope that they throw it away?
Well, here's what I know. And then Kevin, I'll have you address this. I'm in Chicago last week at my strategic coach workshop, and there's an attorney in there. And during our workshop, that Texas court, somebody sued the government saying we shouldn't have to do this. It's unconstitutional. The Texas court agreed with them. And instead of saying you guys don't have to do it, they said nobody has to do it.
In Texas.
But no.
Oh, all around. Yeah.
And so it's on appeal. It's like they pushed pause on it and it's not settled yet.
Okay.
So it could be reversed on appeal. I think that's my understanding of it, at least. And so, Kevin, I'd love to hear your...
I just don't want to get locked out of my Zen business account.
Right. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, exactly right. And so first of all, this FinCEN thing is also known as CTA, also known as BOI, which stands for Beneficial Ownership Information. And the rule was, or it is until, but currently on pause, is that if you have an Inc. or an LLC, any entity organized in any Secretary of State in the U.S., which is 50 states plus all our U.S. territories, then you need to file an information report with FinCEN, which is an agency of Department of Treasury that's in charge of financial crimes. And this thing passed back during COVID under President Trump, and it was a bipartisan vote of Congress. And the joke was, last time I was on your podcast, was that I think every Congress was sitting around during COVID binge watching Ozark and decided all business owners and investors were laundering money, and came up with this rule because there was no federal database that with this information. So what's supposed to happen? You're supposed to report everyone in your LLC or Inc. that has more than 20% ownership, 20% or more. Yeah. That could be multiple people, right? And what if you're in a syndicate and everybody has 5% or less? Well, then you got to decide who's in charge, right? And report that person. And it's a big pain, but I speak around the country to different business and investor groups, and all year, since middle of last year, I've been talking about it, and I always ask for a show of hands. Who has never heard of this? Mm-hmm. And in every audience, every group, every state that I'm in, at least half the hands go up. They have no idea. So this was about to be a hot mess because the deadline is December 31st, 2024. Right. The penalty is up to 10 grand per entity plus 2 years in jail. And most have no idea. And I'm like, how would this play out politically? Is if they get the lady selling her knittings on Etsy that has an LLC and she has no idea about it, and they put her in jail, and then she's going to be on The View. And how's that going to play out, right? And but anyway, the court, as you mentioned, put it on hold. So right now, Timmy, I would not file that thing. And but be prepared in the event that the business owners don't win, right? If the government wins, you'd have to be prepared to
to do it,
to file. But they did say that while this thing's on appeal, it is on pause, and including whatever deadline passes between now and then. But this was about to be a giant mess, and we all kind of hope it goes away. All of us that aren't in the business of preparing these for money.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah. All right, cool. That's good to know.
So you have two entities, right?
I have two entities, yeah.
So you'd have to do that twice.
I'd have to do it twice.
I've got 15.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the things that scare me, right? You're going to get your Barron commercial and the obvious ones. It's these single member LLCs that are scary. And by the way, when you go in to do this, they ask for a tax ID number. If you have single member LLCs, you may have no ID number. And if someone was trying to do this on New Year's Eve and have to apply for a tax ID number, they're not going to get it, right? And so this could have been bad, but it's all those little entities that scare me. That how many clients don't know about it at all, and even those that do, actually complying and not missing something was scary. But I hope it goes away. We'll see.
Yeah,
yep.
I do too.
Me too.
I do too. I got a question for Lonnie.
Okay.
Lonnie, it was a couple of episodes ago. I guess your all's episode 293 is what it was. Yeah. Soft landing or hard truth, $1 billion deals. But in it, it looks like you all talked about $1 billion venture to identify and support office to residential projects. We've talked about that before. We talked about how hard that is to do. And so I'm just curious right here about what can you about it?
Yeah, so I've actually kind of changed my position at some level on this office to residential conversion.
Ooh, breaking news.
Yeah, news sounder.
Or a handful of episodes on his podcast.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think I was thinking about this, like, just logically. I don't think office to residential conversion at scale is possible. And I still don't think it's possible. I don't think it's plausible. I don't think it's realistic. But for some of these funds that are targeted, for them to hit their return hurdle, for them to be successful, they only need to find 5 or 6 or 10 offices that check the box for them. In those instances, I think in some of these markets where you have public-private partnership, you have the right incentives, you have the right pricing, you can probably make these things work. So I know there's been a couple of announcements, $1 billion funds like targeting this. I think in those select instances, you're probably going to get, call it 100, 200, 1,000, 10,000 type of offices across the U.S. that maybe are good candidates and this financially works. So I think it's like anything else. It's like not going to become something that everyone can do, but you're going to have a group of winners that really figure this out, and they're going to become pretty successful at this, I think. So
didn't you guys, sorry to interrupt, didn't you guys like actually profile markets and actual properties that might be good candidates for this?
Yeah, so we ran a list through our data, or created a list using our data, and there's about 213 office buildings that we would flag as prime candidates for this. I think it spans 28 states. Like, again, if you look at the total, that 213 properties as a percentage of the total office properties we track, it's about 3.5%. If you look at it by loan balance, it's about 4%. So again, it's not 50%, it's not 10%, but there's a reasonable sample of properties, and you could extrapolate that even beyond our data set. So I think for these folks that are well positioned, have some capital, you're probably going to see some of these things play themselves out in a positive way.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Lonnie, if somebody wanted access to the 213 properties, what should they do?
They could reach out to me. I might know a guy. They could fill out a form on our website. We'll send them the report, and we'll reach out to them. Shoot me a message on LinkedIn. Hit me up on Twitter. Happy to share some stuff with folks.
Okay, I thought you were going to say subscribe to something that you.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like we want people to subscribe, but look. It's let's get to know each other. Let's talk to you on a call. We'll show you what we have to offer, and then we can talk about subscription. But yeah, we'd love to grow our user base, and given where we are in the market cycle, our data is even more valuable because looking for distressed opportunities, like we have all of the financial data. We have the operating statement, income and expense reporting from the owner at the property level for the full life of the loan. And we have that data on every property that's been financed using CMBS, Fannie Freddie, CRE CLO, going back to the 90s. So largest historical repository of owner submitted income and expense financial statements. And then we build some really cool stuff on top of it that makes accessing it super easy.
That is Lonnie Hendry. Hit him up on LinkedIn. Lonnie, Lonnie, Hendry, Hendry, right?
Thanks, Timmy. Yep. And then Lonnie _CRE on Twitter.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah, people need to know.
Now let's transition to promoting Kevin's business here.
Okay, yeah.
So Kevin, tell us about Bassett and Associates. Like, profile your ideal client.
Sure. Yeah. No, great. So what we work with business owners, investors that either have $1 million of profit or $1 million of net operating income in their projects. And that's what we focus on. And we help them work with them on the financial side to help them make more, grow that EBITDA or the NOI, and help them drive down their effective tax rate. And we have clients nationwide. It's a lot of fun, and we have a great team, and that's what we do.
Do I remember this correctly, where you all offer free webinars or other resources that you do as well?
Yeah, sure. For folks on our email list, we have do emails and client alerts during the year, and that's free for those that want the information and maybe not an ideal client right now, or maybe growing into that. They're earlier on their journey. Love to get them drinking the Kool-Aid early.
Where should they go to get on your list or to engage with you?
Yeah. Sure, yeah, BassettCPAs.com, and there's a contact page there, and happy to add them and help them out however we can. But yeah, what we just love working with business owners and investors and then guiding them on that journey. I just think it's the best game in town. That's where the world we love to live in.
Yeah, yep. And Bassett is BassettCPAs.com, correct?
Yep, BassettCPAs.com, yes.
And it will be in the show notes for anybody listening. Just go to those show notes. While you're there, if you're on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and scroll on down. You could write a review for us. That'd be amazing. And then Lonnie Hendry, too, you can reach out to him individually, but he is one of 4. Is it 4 hosts on Treppwire? 3 hosts on the Treppwire podcast. They do up to date what's going on every single week in the commercial real estate industry. So it's Bo's favorite commercial real estate podcast. Check it out, Treppwire podcast. Trepp.
This is true.
Yep.
Hey, we have a new review. We got a shout out there on Apple Podcasts.
Oh, we do?
Yeah.
Okay,
great.
Hear it? Yes. If you do leave a review on Apple Podcasts, we shout you out.
Yes.
We shout it out. So what do we got there, Bo?
This is my friend Renee Nelson, who's going to come on the show, I think in the next month or 2.
Okay, great.
She's and Isaac Grant works with her.
Isaac Grant. Oh, is she the one that owns a haberdashery shop?
I don't know about that.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Here's what she says. As a loyal listener, I can confidently say that Commercially Speaking delivers spot-on insight for the commercial real estate industry. Bo and Timmy strike the perfect balance between humor and education, keeping you engaged while teaching valuable lessons that apply to real-world situations. Bo Barron is truly top-notch. His experience shines in every episode. Whether you're a seasoned professional or new to the industry, this podcast is a mind of actionable advice. Highly recommend to anyone in CRE.
Nice.
Thank you so much, Renee.
Thanks, Renee. That's
and
amazing.
We look forward to having you on the show.
That's amazing. For everybody, after you sign up for Kevin Bassett's email newsletter, hop on over to, and I'm sure Trepp, you all have.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You all have a newsletter as well, don't you?
Oh yeah, we have daily newsletters. We have all kinds of stuff. You just go to Trepp.com. You can go to research and insights. We have a bunch of stuff for free. You can subscribe. Just put in your information and you get signed up. And
unbelievable wealth of
information. Love to get people. Our research team is really top notch, and we put out a bunch of stuff at no cost. That really just, if you're someone that's CRE or CRE adjacent, we cover topics that would be useful for you, and you can get access to a lot of our stuff for no cost.
Excellent. That's great. So we got 3 newsletters that you all can sign up for free, including ours, which
That's
you
right.
go to subscribe.wgbarron.com. Comes out every single Thursday. It'll include one of the podcast episodes as well as what else?
We aggregate information on negotiation, commercial real estate, business leadership, culture, all those things that I kind of like to geek out on. We aggregate that, sit it out on Thursdays. It's a quick read. It's something that's easily digestible and is worth 2 minutes of your time. And we'd love to connect with you there.
Absolutely. And if you have not yet, please subscribe to Commercially Speaking on YouTube. Ding that little bell. You will get notified every time we post something, as well as following us across all social media platforms.
And I do want to make one announcement.
Yeah, please.
On January 10th, which is a Friday at noon Central Time, we are going to have a live episode with a previous guest named Michael Hieronymus, who's going to come on and he's going to talk about AI and commercial real estate and all the things that we can look out for in 2025.
Yes.
That space is changing so quickly. But what we want to do with that episode is we want to get a live audience to interact with Michael, ask him questions. We can track all of that. We'll be live on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and X.
And X, yeah.
So whatever platform you prefer, join us January 10th at noon Central Time. And we'd love to have enough of an audience there live where we can really interact with Michael and get your questions answered. That should be a really interesting episode with a hot topic of AI.
Absolutely. And if you all aren't following us on X, it's COM Speak Pod. Com Speak Pod. At Commercially Speaking everywhere else. But check it out. We're super excited about that. Michael Hieronymus, we had him before. You could watch that right here if you wanted. It blows my mind what he can do with AI and everything going there. Lonnie Hendry of the Trepp podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you guys. Haley said for me to let you guys know we're having both of you on our show soon. So you're going to be getting an email on that. And I would like to cross-promote this Michael stuff. Like, we should talk about that. The stuff he's doing with AI is really awesome. And kind of on a side note, I'd reached out to him on X as well and said, hey, come do a lunch and learn or something with the folks at Trepp. So if there's something we can do to help cross-promote your live episode, get you some more attendees, we're happy to help you with that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Michael has a course, and we'll talk about it on January 10th. He's had a number of iterations with it. I was in the first group that went through. It's unbelievable. Like, blew my mind, and it's dialed into commercial real estate specifically.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to listen to some AI expert and then translate it into how it'll work into commercial real estate. He's done all the hard work for you, and it is
That's true.
Incredible.
Yeah, Lonnie, thank you so much for offering that. We'll reach out to you and figure out
sounds great.
ways we can do that. That's awesome. And Kevin Bassett, #1 CPA in America. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure. Always have me back.
We will. We might do like a specific tax episode and bring you back a little bit closer.
Yeah, good chance next year we'll have something to talk about. So
That's right. I think so too. Well, fellas, thank you so much for being here. Bo, love you, man.
Love you, brother.
We'll see you all next Monday.
All right.
Bye, Alice.
Bye, Alice.
Bye, Ann.
Yeah. Bye, Ann.